It's the week beginning Monday the 13th of August, and this is Business Unwrapped, brought to you by Barclays Corporate Banking. All through this bonus series, we've been speaking with industry experts about a big business story that'll shape how we live our lives in the years to come. I'm Olly Mann. Let's unwrap the business week. And joining me today from the week's digital team is Rebecca Gillie. And down the line from Gloucestershire, we have the founder of energy provider Ecotricity, Dale Vince. Hi, Dale.
Hi there.
Hi, thanks for joining us. Now, before we sink our teeth into your story, tell us a little bit about what occupies your days at Ecotricity.
Oh, blimey. All sorts of stuff. There's always a lot of day job issues in the energy market. Run a football club, of course, which keeps us busy, and the season has just begun. That football club is Forest Green Rovers. We run that national network of charging points called Electric Highway. We're just creating a range of vegan school dinners. There's a lot of stuff going on in my day.
And what was the original impetus for starting a green energy company?
Well, I can identify the trigger point. It was 1991. I was living on a hill outside Stroud, temporarily, because you can't live on hills for that long. You get evicted. In a trailer with a little windmill. I'd been 10 years living off the grid. Saw the first wind farm built in Cornwall. Was familiar with wind energy at a small scale and thought, I could do this for another 10 years, or I could drop back in and try and build a big windmill on this hill, which I happen to know is windy. And that was like the epiphany moment for me. Let's do that. And I dedicated the next 5 years of my life to learning everything about wind energy and getting that first project built.
Wow. See, Rebecca, see what you could have done with your time?
Thanks.
Why haven't you been building windmills?
I wouldn't recommend it.
Okay, Dale, what are we talking about today?
We're talking about an unusual conversion to the cause of green energy.
Christians, like Jews and many other religious people too, talk a lot about God as faithful. God is involved in building to last, in creating a sustainable world and sustainable relationships with us human beings. He doesn't give up on the material of human lives. He doesn't throw it all away and start again. And he asks us to approach one another and our physical world with the same commitment. The life of Jesus, the life in which God identifies completely with our flesh and blood, is the supreme sign of that commitment.
Okay, that was Dr. Rowan Williams speaking back in 2007 when he was the Archbishop of Canterbury. Dale, what is the story here?
The story is about the Church of England and their conversion to the cause of green energy, the approach that they're taking to get as many of their buildings as they can to switch to green energy for all of the benefits that brings, including really divestment from fossil fuels. They spend a big sum of money on energy every year, and currently that's going to the bad guys.
And how have they done that?
We've been working with them for a number of years, and it's about, I think, education and persuasion and patience and that kind of stuff. And I think now they've got themselves a policy and much more of a programmatic approach to it, and they're saying, look, we're going to do this, which is really helpful. I mean,
Rebecca, do you think there's something about the Church of England that makes it slightly easier for them to switch? They're still a huge organisation. It's an unwieldy thing to do, but compared to the likes of, I don't know, even the NHS or certainly companies like Tesco, it's easier for the COV to make a moral decision.
Yes, in that, people do already expect them to behave in a way that does line up with, some pretense of Christian morality. And certainly, they don't have the same obstacles as, say, a Tesco that is very much beholden to its shareholders and would have to justify any changes. So what's happened is that not just the C of E, they've kind of spearheaded it, but other Christian denominations have converted 5,500 churches to renewable energy. Obviously, that's much easier to activate within the church community than it would be for a corporation like Tesco. And then, of course, with the NHS, you've got lots of very complicated issues with contracting and joined-up thinking, which isn't really their strong suit. And also, of course, the NHS budget crisis means it's probably not top of the agenda, although a handful of hospitals have also tried to move in this direction.
And a lot of the pressure came not from Scripture, but from The Guardian, who have been campaigning for the Church of England to divest its pension from fossil fuel reserves. Now, that's taken 3 years, but they have done it. How hard do you think that was?
Well, it was a long time coming, but not necessarily for the reason that you might think, because you might be thinking, oh, they're just a bunch of, stuffy old men. They probably don't care or understand about the environment, and which wasn't really the case. The General Synod, which is the Council of Clergy and Laity of the Church of England, have been in agreement that they do need to withdraw their investments from companies that are involved in fossil fuels. The divide has really been kind of ideological. There's a strong group within the church that thinks the best way to affect change is to remain invested in those companies and to keep pressuring them, because they say if we cut ties, then they have no incentive to change their ways. And then, of course, the competing faction that Ron Williams was really a part of, saying that we need to act decisively, we need to show them we mean business and start cutting those ties, or they're going to think that we're quite ineffectual.
And Dale, I mean, I guess you could expand this question into any kind of green incentive, really. Are your efforts, and companies and organisations like you, are your efforts best focused on trying to target individuals, house owners, individual consumers to switch? Or actually, is it a better idea to go for big organisational change like this, where thousands of residences then get affected?
We do both. They both
I'm asking you to choose. Which is better?
Well, we do both, and they both have a different kind of impact. Sometimes when you make an organisational change, there can be a big bang moment. 5,000 churches have changed in the last year or so. That's a big change. But when you do it at the people level, word of mouth travels very well, and you can get a more slow build, but ultimately bigger outcome. So we do both. I'm personally just really pleased that the church have identified the environment as a cause that is so close to their own belief systems, and something that they want to do more about. And that dilemma of, do you work with, say, for example, a fossil fuel company to try and change their behavior from the inside, or do you walk away? That's an interesting one. We face that. Not with fossil fuel companies, but there are some companies that come to us for green energy supply, and they give us moral and ethical problems in terms of our stance. Sometimes it's with our vegan agenda. So, for example, we won't supply an abattoir or a factory farm and stuff like that. And then other times we power Ford's engine factory at Dagenham, and people back in the day said to us, you shouldn't be working with a car company. But actually we believed it was worth working with them, and they did feel great benefit from having a windmill, and then they went on to have like 2 more, and now they're making electric cars. So those guys, I think, can be influenced and changed, whereas a fossil fuel company, I think the church are right, you just got to walk away from them because they can't change. The basic business practice is wrong, and they have to stop doing it.
And wouldn't the best approach for churches who want to have green energy, though, be to put solar panels on their roofs rather than get energy from people like you?
Well, it's not the best approach, but it's certainly something they can do, and we're talking to lots of them, churches, because they're all individual. And there's a point was being made earlier that it might be easier or harder for Tesco's or the NHS. I can't remember which way around it was, but the church itself seems to me to be much less well organised as an estate of properties, and so it's quite difficult organisationally. All of the churches individually buy their power and stuff like that. But we've been talking to a lot of them about putting solar panels on the roofs, and it is something they can do. But of course, feed-in tariffs for solar power have been pretty much killed off, and so the economics of that have become more challenging right now.
And I don't know, Rebecca, who's your energy supplier? Do you know off the top of your head?
This is going to sound like something out of the 1950s, but my husband set it up.
And did he just go with British Gas?
Yes,
gas for the gas?
Yes, it was British Gas.
Okay, fair enough. Well, I mean, the thing that I've noticed, Dale, sort of being interested in this conversation, just as a viewer and a listener over the last few years, is that it's often presented as it's really easy to make the switch. It's just as easy as switching to any of the gas companies, choosing a renewable company, use the same pipes, it's just a different person supplying your bills. But I actually practically don't understand how that can actually be the case. I mean, at the other end, something's happening, isn't it? How can it just be the same?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people raise this point. It's the same with electricity and gas, and basically we can't direct our molecules of gas or electrons to our specific customers. That's the same whether you compare brown with brown, like British Gas and E.ON, for example, or brown with green. It's just the way it is. So the way the system works, there's like a national grid or national pool, and we suppliers are responsible for putting enough energy into that system for all of our customers to take out. So we take that responsibility. So when you pay your bill to Ecotricity, for example, you know that you're paying for the green electricity that we put in the grid. The actual electrons probably won't get to you, but most people don't worry about that little detail.
How difficult is it to get big financial backing for the green projects you're working on?
Well, that's an interesting question. At the moment, you can't build wind and solar large-scale projects onshore in Britain because there's no support mechanism financially. So without that, you can't get backing either, but you don't need it. You just can't build them. It's a kind of circular argument. But when the right conditions are in place, it's absolutely easy to get financial backing for big renewables projects.
I mean, it is complicated, isn't it, Rebecca, for consumers? I'm looking into buying a new car now. I want a Mini. I've decided I want a Mini first and foremost before I've decided what kind of engine it's going to have. And then you think, okay, well, I don't want a diesel because you can see that the tide's turning against that. Preferably, I'd like a hybrid. They don't make one. So it's kind of like the public have evolved quicker than the car manufacturers have.
Yes, and the thing is that I think a lot more people now are open to the idea of electric cars or hybrid cars. The real issue is that, aside from, as you said, availability, is that it's hard to change people's habits. You know, it takes a certain type of person to say, I'm going to go and get an electric car, I'm going to get a hybrid car. But we are slowly starting to see a bit of a cultural change that makes it more acceptable, because people don't want to be the only person in their family or the only person in their group to have this, electric car, because you get this horrible vision you're going to be out with all your friends and suddenly your electric car runs out of power and you'd be stranded alone. It's hard to be a pioneer, but now that it is becoming more popular and you are seeing more recharging points around, it does seem to be picking up in popularity.
But am I right, Dale, that actually the manufacturers aren't really keeping pace with... I suppose what I'm saying is actually keeping pace with the fact that increasingly middle-aged people, as older people die out, middle-aged people are the people who are at school were told all about the problems of the environment and want to do something about it. They've got the spending power, but they can't buy it.
Yeah, I think the manufacturers are doing rather well, and I believe there's an electric Mini coming next year, so just hold on.
So keep driving my diesel for another year? Environmentally, I'm not sure what the benefit is there.
No, I think probably environmentally that's okay, better than buying a Mini now that's new and not electric, because you'll have embedded a lot of carbon in that car for many years to come. So all the major manufacturers are bringing out big ranges of electric and hybrid cars. It really kicks off next year, though, with a pretty standard 300-kilometre range, which is really going to take care of that range anxiety issue as well. And other manufacturers like Volvo have been really forward-thinking and saying that by 2020, which is only 2 years away, or a year and a half, they won't make a conventional car. Everything they make will be electric or hybrid. So I think the manufacturers are actually in the vanguard of producing the kit that people are going to want and currently do want at the moment.
What do you think energy-wise is going to happen in the next 10 years?
We introduced the idea to Britain in 2010, and it was quite a new idea that we can make gas from organic material and we can scrub it up to make it suitable and put it into the gas grid, just the way we do with electricity. And then we worked for a few years on the fuel source for those, what we call green gas mills, because we didn't like the idea of food waste or stuff coming out of factory farms. And we came up with an amazing concept, which is to use grass. And then we studied the amount of land available in Britain that was marginal farmland or marginal grassland. I wouldn't compete with food crops and that kind of stuff, and discovered there's enough to produce gas to power all of Britain's homes just from grass, and in the process create these incredible wildlife habitats on an unprecedented scale, millions of acres of land going organic, just being cropped twice a year to make gas that's climate neutral.
So what do you do to the grass once you've taken it away?
Cut it.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, you stick it into a green gas mill, which is basically an anaerobic digester. It breaks down in the absence of oxygen, and it turns it into gas that is more or less ready to go into the grid. You just have to scrub it up a little bit.
And what happens to everyone's lawn?
They'd be well kept.
Wow.
We've got planning permission for our first project down in Somerset. We call them green gas mills, and if it was done on a national scale, we could create 150,000 sustainable jobs. We'd avoid the burning of £7 billion worth of cash a year on fossil fuel gas, and create incredible wildlife habitats and become independent in terms of where our gas comes from. It's a really exciting opportunity for the country.
And so what's your next target regarding religious institutions then? It seems to me once you've got the Church of England, you should be aiming at least at the Catholics, the Jews, the Muslims, the Hindus. Where are you going?
Well, yeah, we don't want to be discriminatory. I don't know. Joking aside, we're open to everybody. We're completely inclusive. We want everybody to adopt green energy, electric cars, vegan food, and support Forest Green Rovers.
Is that the football club Jesus would have supported?
I'd like to think so.
My thanks to Dale Vince and to Rebecca Gillie and to our sponsor Barclays Corporate Banking. That is your business briefing for this week. We will be back in a fortnight with another bonus episode, and remember to hear the main show, The Week Unwrapped, where we cover 3 stories that have flown under the radar each week. Make sure you subscribe on your podcatcher of choice or find us at theweekunwrapped.com. I've been Olly Mann. Our music is by Tom Morby, the producer, Matt Hill at Rethink Audio. Until next time, bye-bye.